Today we are going to compare the two great towns of Kitchener and Stratford, Ontario. While both of these towns have some great things to offer in their own unique way, I do feel like they do somewhat complement each other rather than comparing the two. Now, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna dive deeper into some of the key aspects that make both of these towns a great place to live. We'll look at things like location, job opportunities, we'll look at quality and pace of life in each of this town. We'll also look at cost of living, cost of housing, all those things that you should be considering if you are a buyer trying to decide between Kitchener-Waterloo and then Stratford on the other hand. So stay tuned as we get right into it. Hello and welcome. If this is your first time to this channel, be sure to subscribe and tap on the bell for notifications so you are the first to learn about the current market in and around Kitchener-Waterloo. My name is Dixit. I'm a local real estate agent serving Kitchener-Waterloo and surrounding areas, and I've helped many families with their move in and around Kitchener-Waterloo, and I absolutely love it. So whether you're thinking of moving in 9 days or 9 months, be sure to reach out. You can give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email, or you can even schedule a Zoom call. All the info you will find right below in the description. I'll be more than happy to help you and your family make a smooth move in and around Kitchener-Waterloo. First, let's talk about the location for Stratford and KW. On one hand, you have Kitchener-Waterloo, which is more centrally located in my honest opinion. You're close to many great towns and many other suburbs around it. I can name a few off the top of my head, like including Guelph, Hamilton, Burlington, even GTA suburbs like Mississauga, Brampton. And if you do have to head all the way to downtown Toronto, you're still looking at about 90-minute commute from pretty much any part of Kitchener-Waterloo. So you do have a close proximity to many great suburbs and the major towns around it if you do need to access it. So I would say it's more centrally located. If I were to compare Stratford to that, what you will find is Stratford is a little bit inward. It is part of Perth County, and the nearest biggest town is Kitchener-Waterloo itself. So many people living in Stratford, for example, will head to Waterloo for Costco shopping. So that's the major urban center you're looking at if you are living in Stratford. Now, just keep in mind, Stratford to KW, still about 25 to 30 minutes, depending on what part of KW you're looking at, but it's not gonna be that big of a commute. So it's still feasible. What I do see a lot of people doing is, they find a far more value for real estate, especially when it's time for them to buy something. So they rather move to Stratford and find work, or if they're already working in Kitchener-Waterloo, it's still easily commutable. It's like, back in days how things used to be between Mississauga and Brampton and some of these other suburbs nearby. So I feel like that's what's happening here as well, with Kitchener-Waterloo getting more densely populated. More and more people are basically stretching beyond the boundaries of these bigger towns, and that's resulting in the more development happening in some of the smaller communities around the Kitchener-Waterloo, and Stratford is one of the classic example of that. But coming back to my point about location, I would say Kitchener is more centrally located, but I would say, if you don't plan on commuting to Greater Toronto area far too often, honestly, Stratford is not a bad option. Now let's talk about the employment opportunities for both these towns of Kitchener-Waterloo and Stratford. Now, for the sake of context, we are not going to really compare the opportunities that exist in both these towns, because as we know, Kitchener-Waterloo being far bigger towns obviously have far more opportunities. What I'm trying to help you understand is what you might have to do. On one hand, you have far more diverse employment opportunities, and the economy itself for the whole Waterloo region in terms of employment is self-sustaining. Not a lot of people do commute outside of the Waterloo region for work. Primarily, majority of the people living in KWC, Kitchener-Waterloo, Cambridge, will be primarily working in one of these towns or maybe commuting all the way to Guelph if they have to. But we don't see a lot of people commuting all the way to downtown Toronto for that matter. So that's what I'm trying to say when I say it's a self-sustaining work economy. On the other hand, if we are talking about Stratford, predominantly used to be driven by the tourism. Stratford Festival was world-renowned and did drive tourists from all over the world. Now, over time, that has definitely evolved. Now there are jobs available in advanced tech, manufacturing, agriculture, and some of those other occupations. What I'm trying to say, Stratford is still a very small town and a smaller community, so do not expect there to be a lot of job opportunities, and your chances of finding work locally in Stratford might be thin, what a lot of people who move in Stratford, they end up finding work in Kitchener-Waterloo and some of the surrounding towns, and they do basically end up commuting, which is actually not bad, about 20 to 25 minutes. So you live in Stratford, but then you go to work for Kitchener-Waterloo or Cambridge or Guelph on the other hand. So that's likely what you might have to end up doing if you end up moving to Stratford. Honestly, if you live in Kitchener and let's say if you do have to commute to Cambridge for your work, it's still going to be about, somewhere around 20 minutes. So with Stratford, it's going to be somewhere around rather 30 minutes. So it's really not that bad, but this is just one thing you have to remember. Be prepared to commute to KWC if you live in Stratford. For work, you might have to get out of town. If I were to talk about housing and the cost of living, I would say that's the number one driver that is driving a lot of buyers, especially the first-time home buyers, to move to Stratford, Ontario over Kitchener-Waterloo. Because the value of real estate and the affordable price point that you can find just about 25 minutes away from Kitchener-Waterloo is just amazing. I'll give a simple example. Right now, there's a renowned builder called Cache Homes that is building 2-story townhomes in Stratford for under $600,000, and these are freehold townhomes with no condominium fees. There is also another builder called Ridgeview Homes. I will do actually a tour of those in my coming days, but Ridgeview Homes has built a detached double garage homes close to 2,500 square feet of living space around $1 million. So you cannot find that anywhere in Kitchener-Waterloo, Cambridge. You can see when it comes to real estate, there is a material difference in the price, and that is what's driving a lot of people to move to Stratford, Ontario. I would say Stratford is what Kitchener-Waterloo used to be somewhere around 10 to 15 years ago, and that's what Stratford is right now. So just the affordable price point obviously will directly result in the lower cost of living. And if you plan on renting, I would say even the rents in Stratford are obviously far cheaper than what you can find in KWC, especially with a lot of demand across student rentals. That has definitely shot up the price for rentals as well. So on the other hand, Stratford is definitely more affordable, far more cheaper when it comes to buying a home. So if you are a first-time home buyer planning to buy your first home and working with that budget of around $600,000 and you're planning to buy a brand new home, I don't think you can find anywhere in KWC other than the condominiums or townhomes in Stratford. You can do a freehold townhome. So housing and cost of living, definitely Stratford, and that's, like I said, the number one reason that's driving people to that town. Let's talk about the quality and pace of life for both these towns. On one hand, Stratford offers a very suburban lifestyle and a quiet setting. And like I said, it's still a very small community, although it is developing with many people moving into Stratford, Ontario. So the town is, I feel like, going through some, development and the evolution in terms of demographics. Also, at least at this moment, you will find Stratford to be not as diversely populated. You will not find a lot of people from different cultures, different ethnicity, but that could change with a lot of people migrating into Stratford from some other parts, as I mentioned earlier. So you will find Stratford to be that small town charm in a suburban and quiet setting, but also there are some pain points that come with it. If you're especially moving from one of the bigger urban towns, I will get to that in a later part of this video, but there might be some pain points that come with that, and it might take some adjustment for you to, adjust to that lifestyle. On the other hand, you have Kitchener-Waterloo, which is more urban in nature, at least compared to Stratford. You will definitely find pace of life that's normally faster, not as fast as Toronto, but you will definitely find to be more crowded, more densely populated, and at the same time, on the other end, there are more things to do because it's a more bustling town, more bustling energy in general. So the lifestyle in KW is more fast-paced, more urban in nature, even though it is a suburb. And on the other hand, Stratford is far more suburban and quiet. So depending on who do you ask, you will get different answers on whether you would consider living in KW versus Stratford. But especially if you are moving from one of the bigger towns, you might get a shock when you move to Stratford. But I feel like you could adjust to it over time. With KW being in a close proximity, it's really not that bad. You could always head to KW to enjoy those urban settings. So that's my take on it when it comes to quality and the pace of life. Both of these towns do kind of complement each other in some way when it comes to the quality and the pace of life. Now, we're going to talk about things to do in both these towns. Well, if I were to talk about Stratford, I feel like it is going through some pain points of a growing town that is still very small community, and there are not a lot of things to do for a young active family. I mean, definitely there's plenty of outdoor nature to enjoy and indulge in. Even the Stratford downtown, it's just perfect for you. It gives you that small town charm. But other than that, if I were to compare with things to do in terms of shopping options, dining options offered by Kitchener-Waterloo, comparison to Stratford, definitely the options are few and far apart in Stratford. Now, having said that, the growing pains of a growing city is what I feel like Stratford is currently going through. So especially if you are moving from one of the bigger towns, just be prepared to commute often to KW. For example, people living in Stratford, I do have a few families that I've helped move in Stratford, and they come to Waterloo for their Costco shopping. Or in terms of dining options, there may not be a lot of different restaurants, especially the diverse options of different cuisines. Well, that's where you will head to KW to enjoy those things. But just you have to be prepared and adjust to that lifestyle before you make that decision. You don't want to move in there and find these surprises later down the road. So just know that overall things to do, I feel like KW has far more things to do and places to hang out in comparison to Stratford. It's just what do you like and what can you adjust with. That's what you have to think about when you're comparing the two. Now, besides that, I do want to also touch upon a couple of quick things that might matter to you. One of them is the public transportation. So Stratford as a whole within the city, great public transportation. It's a very small town, but you can easily access it using the public transportation, even though it's a small suburban town. But when it gets challenging is when you need to get out of the city. You will definitely need a car. It is a car-friendly town that way. It's not as greatly connected to some of the major towns around it, such as Kitchener-Waterloo. So just bear that in mind. You don't want to move to that town and solely rely on the public transportation because you might find it very challenging. On the other hand, Kitchener-Waterloo, I feel like is well connected, at least within the Tri-Cities and to Guelph as well. I mean, within the Tri-Cities, we have this LRT system and a good public transit network for the bus system as well. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. And of course, you have connectivity to Toronto through the GO bus and the GO train to some of these Toronto suburbs and the downtown Toronto as well. The other thing I do want to add to here is the nightlife that you can arguably say it's virtually non-existent for both of these towns. Not as many great options, but if you were to compare solely the two of this, you will find KW has better nightlife than Stratford, where it's pretty much non-existent, being a small town. But if you were to compare the KW nightlife with that of Toronto, well, you will definitely be disappointed with the options you find here, which are more geared towards, I feel like, student population. But you know, that's what it is. We are still a suburban town outside of Toronto. We are not Toronto. So just bear those things in mind, as I mentioned earlier in some of my other videos too, as to the nightlife is not that great here in KW. But like I said, if you compare the two, Kitchener-Waterloo will turn out to be better. So those are the few things I wanted to touch base on, so you are aware of what to expect when you move either of these towns. And that finally brings us to $1 million question: whether you should move to Kitchener-Waterloo or Stratford. On the other hand, depends on who do you ask. But in my candid opinion, if you are someone who is working in Kitchener-Waterloo and you don't mind the commute to work, honestly, I feel like Stratford does offer far more value for real estate and equally good potential, because the town is definitely growing and it's going through some changes. And I feel like it will evolve over time, but that might take some time. So you will have to be patient with it. Just be prepared to deal with some of the growing pains I mentioned about not many great things to do, places to hang out. You will have to definitely head to KW far more often living in Stratford. So if you can live with that fact, I feel like you will save a lot of money towards the purchase of your first home. Or within the same budget, you will find far better house living in Stratford versus that of Kitchener-Waterloo. On the other hand, if you can't deal with all the things I mentioned about Stratford and you feel like it might be too small and too suburban for you, then I would say stick to KW, because last thing you want is to regret in the town you just moved into. And that's why I always emphasize the town that's right for you is the one that really meets your own unique needs for you and your family. And that's the town you should be moving into, not the one that me or anyone else tells you to. So I hope nonetheless you did get some value, or it did help you shape your perspective about both these towns in somewhat manner. And if you did get some value, be sure to give it a thumbs up subscribe to this channel so YouTube knows that I'm doing a somewhat good job here nonetheless. And whether you're thinking of moving in Kitchener-Waterloo or Stratford, I can still help you out nonetheless. Be sure to reach out. All the info you will find right below in the description. I'll be more than happy to help you guys make a smooth move in and around. Until next time, well, I do hope to show you around town.